ミュートにしてください。
Good morning and welcome to this morning's December Shotsuki Hoyo monthly memorial service, where we honor, we recognize, we remember those who have passed in the month of December. Just a little housekeeping. This service is being recorded so that we can post it to our YouTube channel, but only the speakers will be recorded. So all the attendees will not be recorded, just to let you know. I invite you all to mute your microphones for the duration of service. And then I'll invite you to invite it afterwards so we can say hello to each other. At this time, I'd like to begin with the reading of the names. Traditionally in the temple, we would come, when you hear your loved one's name read, you would walk up and offer incense at the big incense burner. But today, since we're not at the temple, I invite you to either offer incense on your home altar, or to simply put your hands in Gassho and recite Namo Amida Butsu. So with that, I would like to introduce and invite Mrs. Joshi Yao to read December's Shotsuki Hoyo names. Our first reading today will be the Three Treasures 1. And for those who have the service book, it's on page 15. Otherwise, it'll be displayed on the screen, so you could join along, please. Hard is it to be born into human life. Now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the teachings of the Blessed One. Now we hear it. If we do not realize the truth in this life, when will it be realized? Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. May we absorb ourselves in the principle of the way to enlightenment and awaken in ourselves the supreme will. I take refuge in the Dharma. May we be submerged in the depths of the doctrine and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. May we live in harmony in the great assembly as disciples of Buddha and be freed from all hindrances, becoming units of true accord in the life of harmony, in a spirit of universal oneness, freed from the bondage of selfishness. Even through myriad ages of kalpas, hard is it to hear such an excellent, profound, and wonderful doctrine. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of the Tathagata's teaching. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandots. 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 We will now have Sutra chanting with Leo Balambao Sensei. He'll be chanting Sambujo on page 24 in the Purple Service Book, and Junirai, page 67, also in the Purple Service Book. And it'll also be displayed on the screen so you can chant along.
Bujoy midanyo rai niundo joy san ge ra We respectfully acknowledge the Tathagata Amida in our homes as we joyfully offer flowers of welcome. Bunjoy Sakanyora I Niundo Joy San Ge Ra We respectfully acknowledge the presence of Tathagata Shakyamuni in our homes as we joyfully offer flowers of welcome. Bunjoy Jiponyorai Niundo Joy San Ge Ra We respectfully acknowledge the presence of the Tathagatas of the 10 directions in our homes as we joyfully offer flowers of welcome. Today, on the occasion of the Buddhist Church of San Francisco's December Shotsuki Hoyo Memorial Service, we gather virtually in grateful memory, reverently coming before Amida with gratitude for the all-inclusive wisdom and compassion that is Amida Buddha. May the light of wisdom illuminate our hearts and minds to awaken us to our self-concern, and by this insight, stir us to strive for a life of deeper understanding. May the life of compassion warm and innate humanity in our hearts that we may truly appreciate and respect the intrinsic value and dignity of all beings. May we, who have come together, guided by wisdom and vitalized by compassion, awaken to the Buddha Dharma and joyfully share it with others so that we may all fulfill the ultimate meaning of life. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda, 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 Namanda Butsu. Junirai, the 12 verses praising Amida Buddha. Kansho ten shokugyo Amida sen ryozoku son zai mimyo anrako muryo bushi shuinyo 건지기 신조녀센노 샴마타교녀조르 료모그조냐그쇼렌게 공가 초라이미다손 맨센넨조뇨만갓 이고유뇨센이지갓 쇼뇨텐 그지라 공가 초라이미다손 간논 초다이 간지즈 슈즈묘소 호쇼곤 노부궁게도 마교만 공가 초라이미다손 무비무크 고쇼조 슈토크 교케츠뇨 코크 쇼사리야그 토크지사이 공가 초라이미다손 지보묘몬보사시 의료쇼마조선단 이쇼슈조간리기즈 공가 초라이미다손 곤타이호 켄지쇼케 젠곤쇼조묘다이자 오히자 조뇨센노 공가 초라이미다손 지뽀쇼라이 쇼브시 겐겐진세시안락 센고손겐조크교 공가 초라이미다손 쇼의무조무가토 야근여스이가츠덴요로 이실세뽀무묘지 공가 초라이미다손 이손부세츠무 아금요 야금은요닌 아그더르 슈닌시신교희손 공가 초라이미다손 희손무료호벤교 무쇼슈 아그지식 어저흐타이시보다이 공가 초라이미다손 가세츠히손 그도그지 슈젠무헨 뇨카이스이 쇼갸그젠 곤쇼조샤 에세슈 조 이코그 남만다브 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 간니시크도그 묘도세 이사이 돈보다이신 온종 안라코 May this merit virtue be shared equally with all beings. May we together awaken the Bodhi mind and be born in the realm of serenity and joy. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda, Namanda, Namanda Butsu.
Thank you, Leo Sensei. Now, I'm pleased to invite Leo Joslin Sensei to offer his reflections for this morning's December Shotsuki Hoyo monthly memorial.
Good morning. Please join me in Gassho as I read the words of Shinran Shonin. The light of compassion illumines us from afar. Those beings it reaches, it is taught, attain the joy of Dharma. So take refuge in Amida, the great consolation. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Good morning. I'm Leo Joslin, and I'm one of the minister's assistants here at the Buddhist Church of San Francisco. I'd like to thank you for inviting me to do this morning's Dharma talk. This is our Shotsuki Hoyo service. And it's a time of remembrance for those who've crossed over to the other shore, recognizing that they are interwoven into the lives of our being as part of the oneness that pervades the entire universe. So this morning, I'd like to talk about the words that I just read. And these words, I think, are very important and applicable, not only for this morning's service, but also everything that's going on for maybe giving us some comfort for living during the time of a pandemic. So these words are from a verse written by Shinran Shonin, and they're from a wasan. And the wasan is Hymns of the Pure Land. And I'd just like to give you an idea of what these words look like in the collected works of Shinran. So I'm not too technologically oriented, so you're not going to get a PowerPoint, because it would take me a while to figure out how to do that. But what I did was I did old school. So this is what the wasan looks like when you look at it in the collected works of Shinran. So you see the words are here, and then below the words, there are some notes. And I wanted you to see that because I'm going to focus on one of the lines in this verse and one of the footnotes written by Shinran. So the reason that I wanted to talk about this verse is I believe that there are deep spiritual truths found in these words. I especially like the last line. Amida is called the great consolation. And if ever there was a time where we needed great consolation, it's now, especially in this day and age where we have so much going on, with our pandemic. It's reaching new heights. The numbers are surging and it's getting pretty serious. We all are experiencing that now with shelter in place rules that are being tightened up. And we also have everything else going on, the financial crises and economic displacement. A lot of people suffering because of losing jobs, not having income. And then there's the racial injustice of people of color being oppressed. And then we have the political divisiveness and society being in a state of upheaval. And so with all of this going on, I think that these words of Shinran are very, very helpful. Otherwise, if we don't take care of ourselves spiritually and emotionally, we are at risk for going into despair. And I'm sure that many of you have heard that the rate of depression and anxiety is rising to new heights. And so it's very important that we take care of ourselves. And I think that this scripture, that this verse can be very helpful for us. because at the same time, these words remind us that we can have gratitude for the fact that causes and conditions have come together in such a way that we can hear the Dharma. And we can be thankful that we can participate in services such as today's Shotsuki Hoyo, and that we can have a Sangha where we can engage with each other and support each other in the Dharma. And especially we can be grateful for the Nembutsu. We can live in gratitude for the workings of the primal Tao. And so I very much appreciate this verse from Hymns of the Pure Land. And I want to take a look at the last line where it says, take refuge in Amida, the great consolation. And so what exactly is meant by the great consolation? Okay, and so that's why I showed this to you, because there's a footnote where Shinran tells us what he means by great consolation. And by the way, this is in the collected works of Shinran. It's on page 327 of the collected works of Shinran. So he tells us what the great consolation is. He describes it. He says, great consolation, a name of Amida. All the sorrows, griefs, and evils of sentient beings are eliminated and they are comforted. And so I think the pandemic has greatly increased our sorrows and griefs. Here it says sentient beings are comforted. So what might this consolation look like? What does being comforted look like? What does it feel like? And I believe it's very real, but it's different for each and every one of us because we're here as the result of causes and conditions coming together, and those causes and conditions are going to be different for each of us. So what might this look like? I think it's very personal. And I think it's meaningful and it will resonate for you alone in however causes and conditions have come together. So I just wanted to share a story from my own life where I may have experienced great consolation. And this took place a few years back. I went to a seminar that was given by Dr. David Brazier. And some of you might have heard of him. He's a Shin Buddhist, actually, and he is a clinical psychologist. So he gave this seminar at the San Francisco Zen Center. It was an all-day retreat. And so I was really excited to go because I really admired his work. When I was in school, I studied his book, Zen Therapy, and I learned a lot from that book. And so it was very exciting for me to be there. And when I got to this seminar, I was really happy to see that there were only like 15 people there. And this was an all-day event. So I had all day with just a small group of people and Dr. Brazier. So, but unfortunately, during that time in my life, I was going through a lot of stress. I was working as a therapist, and I was working with some really traumatized people that had severe trauma in their lives. And I would, day in and day out, all day long, I'd be hearing these awful stories, many of them very violent, of what happened to these people, maybe things that they had actually done. And so they were people that were suffering really, really serious dukkha. And so you may have heard of a term, vicarious traumatization. And that's something that social workers, therapists, counselors are at risk at. If they hear these stories every day, what happens is that they begin to become traumatized themselves. And I think some of that might have been going on for me because I was feeling depression, I was feeling anxiety, I was feeling overwhelmed. And I think I was being vicariously traumatized. And so when I went to this workshop, I was listening to stories of suffering in the workshop. They were talking about dukkha, they were talking about vulnerable populations that were suffering. We touched on the Rihonga in Myanmar and the suffering that they were undergoing. And I started finding myself triggered. Now, at one point, Dr. Brazier was taking questions. And the way he did it was rather than having us raise our hands, he had us go up to the front of the class and sit in front of him. He put a chair in front of him and he sat there And one by one, we went out, sat in front of them, and gave them our question directly. And so it was really quite an experience. So for me, I went up there, sat down, and the question that I asked was, how can we keep from despairing in a world where there is so much suffering? And in that moment, I was feeling some despair. But Dr. Brazier looked at me and he said, never forget the Buddha's smile. And when he said that, I don't know, something shifted within me, very deep within me. All of a sudden, I felt that despair lifting, and I felt energized. I felt much happier. And so something happened in that split second. Because in that moment, I could sense and feel that the Buddha's smile is grounded in the 4 Brahma Viharas, in compassion, loving kindness, sympathetic joy, equanimity. It's all there. And it seemed to come alive for me in that moment, in that split second. And so I believe that this was Namo Amida Butsu at work. Whatever happened, it did so deep within. Amida, the great consolation, became real for me in that moment. And seeing the Buddha's smile became real for me in that moment. So, of course, I'm speaking metaphorically, because the experience was beyond words and very personal. Remember, Shinran in the Tanishio, Shinran is quoted as saying, when I consider deeply the vow of Amida, which arose from the 5 kalpas of profound thought, I realized that it was entirely for the sake of myself. So I believe one of the messages here is that Shinran was confirming that this is very individualized. It's a very personal experience, dependent upon causes and conditions. As Shinran said, it was entirely for the sake of myself only. So if you think back on your own, think back about experiences that you may have had that might have been similar, where you experienced great joy, where you experienced relief, where you experienced a relief of suffering. And think about how causes and conditions may have come together for you to have that moment. So for myself, for myself, when I say the Nembutsu, when I take refuge in Amida, I somehow connect with the Buddha's smile, and I realize that I'm sustained by all things. So this is only the way that I, as a foolish, ordinary being, as Bonbu, this is the only way I can think of to put it into words, because what I'm trying to put into words is beyond conception. Shinran said it's beyond the conceptual. And so this is just one way of talking about it. Was this Shinjin? I don't know. But what I do know is that the Nembutsu is the deepest and most important practice in my life as a sentient being. So to bring this to a close, this is our monthly Shotsuki Hoyo service. I believe that we recognize these truths in this service, even if it's only on an unconscious, unspoken level or for a split second. We remember those loved ones who've passed over to the other shore, who've crossed over to the other shore. We acknowledge that they have a place in our lives and that they are truly still here with us. And I believe that the energy of the Buddha's smile comes alive during the service. When we participate in services such as this, when we offer incense, when we chant, and especially when we say the Nembutsu, I believe that the Buddha's smile comes alive and that we are realizing our unity with unlimited power, our connections with all things, and our oneness. And this happens deep within. I also believe that saying the Nembutsu, we can move through the pandemic and whatever other upheavals come our way during these times. Hearing the Dharma as it unfolds in so many wondrous ways, we can allow our hearts to open to great compassion and loving kindness. Spreading the Dharma as we do so So I hope to keep this verse from Shinran's Wasan. I hope to keep this close to heart. And I will remember the Buddha's smile and allow it to come alive within me. And remembering, as Shinran taught us, that Amida is the great consolation. So please join me in Gassho. The light of compassion illumines us from afar. Those beings it reaches, it is taught, attain the joy of Dharma. So take refuge in Amida, the great consolation. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leo Sensei. Really appreciate that. We will now have our Gatha, which is like blossoms. It's found on page 208 in the Purple Service book, and it'll also be displayed on the screen. So please sing along.
Like cherry blossoms are the hearts that tomorrow they think they might, for who can tell? But there may be a tempest in the night. Like cherry blossoms are the hearts that tomorrow they think they might, for who can tell? But there may be a tempest in the night.
Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandots. 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 Wow, that's the first time I've heard that. Those are the words of Shinran when he was first a young boy going into the monastery. I've never heard it set to music before. That's lovely. For our closing reflection, I'd like to share with you a piece from Bishop Reverend Kenyu Suji from one of my favorite books. It's called The Heart of the Buddha Dharma. And it actually ties in nicely with Leo Sensei's talk this morning. It's called Eternal Now. In the beginningless, endless flow of time, each life is a mere ripple, existing only for an instantaneous moment and disappearing forever. But each life is a unique experience with beauty and truth, all of its own, with no identical counterpart in history and none absolutely the same in the future. Each life exists in the eternal now. Each idea that is thought, each word that is spoken, each action that is taken changes the whole pattern of the universe, for the universe is interdependent. Think, speak, and act then, always in the eternal now, with compassion and understanding for your own enlightenment and for the enlightenment of all sentient beings. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandots. 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 I would like to thank Leo Joslin Sensei for his Dharma talk this morning. I'd like to thank Leo Balanbao Sensei for leading us in Sutra chanting. I'd like to thank Mrs. Yoshi Yao for reading the Shotsuki Hoyo names this morning. And of course, Kevin Yoza for his audiovisual expertise in keeping these services going every week. Thank you. Are there any announcements? Susan, do you have an announcement?
Yeah, well, there's a board meeting this afternoon at 1. If they want the link to email church, we can send out the link. BCSF office. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other announcements?
Well, I wanted to bring up our book club. Our book club is meeting every other Tuesday. I believe we met this past Tuesday. So someone correct me quickly if I'm wrong. My memory's not that great nowadays, but I think we just met. So it won't be this Tuesday, but the Tuesday after. And we're meeting Tuesdays at 2 o'clock, and we're reading the Awareness of Self. And Reverend William Masuda was the translator of the book. And so he's been joining us. So we've been getting a lot of good insight from the person who translated the Awareness of Self. So everyone's welcome to join. You don't actually need to read the book. You can just come in and listen because we have some very interesting conversations. And then also on Wednesday evening, we have mindfulness meditation at 6:30. And it's a time for us to get together and settle into our bodies and our minds. And it's a way of calming the mind. And so everyone's welcome to join. Just contact the office and we'll send you the link on how to get in. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Okay, this concludes this morning's December Shotsuki Hoyo monthly memorial service. Thank you for joining us. Please stay safe and healthy. And you're welcome to stay on and say hello to one another after this concludes. Please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. 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 Namandots. 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 Thank you.